Okay, so now let's actually dive into JavaScript classes. I said JavaScript, not TypeScript. Remember, we are waiting to cover some TypeScript stuff until we recap the basics of classes in JavaScript. And the reason for that is that I want to make sure we all have the same foundation, the same understanding of classes and their syntax, and some of the newer class syntax, things like class fields, getters and setters, private fields, that some of you may or may not know about. So I would say if you have no experience with classes, this would be a very quick introduction, and it would be worth seeking something else out. But I'm also not going to just blow through it in 3 minutes. So let's start. So classes allow us to create patterns that describe objects, and not only the properties that an object contains, but also the functionality. So what does a thing look like and what can that thing do? And then we can instantiate instances of that class over and over and over. Now I want to be very clear, we're talking about something that's pretty different from a TypeScript interface or a type alias. Those are just describing the shape of some object. But we don't make anything using those types, right? We don't instantiate something from a type. But with classes, we can define a class that says a person has to have a name and an age, and it has a greet method. And then we can actually create a person from that pattern. That blueprint then becomes or is used to instantiate however many people or person instances that we need. So in the early days of JavaScript, we didn't actually have a class keyword, and underpinning the whole thing is the prototype system and constructor functions, and we're not going to really go into that. We're just going to work with classes and the nice syntactic sugar that they provide. Now, I'm actually not going to write my code in the .ts file because I'm going to get some complaints about type issues, and it's just going to be easier if I just write plain JavaScript in the plain JavaScript file. So we're not actually going to bother with TypeScript for the next couple of videos because we're just recapping JavaScript. Okay, so we use the class keyword, and then let's decide on some class that we want to create. Let's say I'm making a game, so I want to have a player class that keeps track of each player's score and their number of lives and their username and a bunch of other stuff. There's some functionality in there to, double someone's score, to reset, to game over, things like that. So often we'll use a capital letter to indicate that something is a class. It's not a requirement. And then inside of here, I technically actually don't have to put anything in there. I've now defined a class, a very basic class that does nothing and has no properties in it. And I can instantiate a new player by using new space player. And then I'll save that to a variable. We'll call it player1, and I'll console.log player1. And we should now have something showing up over here. I set up, in the previous video, if you skip that, we set up the live server, and I've got my player object, and that's kind of all that there is so far. But now we could add in some functionality. We could say every player, every instance made from this pattern needs to have a method called, how about taunt? A game, players taunt each other. I don't know, they'll dance or something, or how about they just console.log booyah. Is there an H on that? Is it boo? No, that's booyah. Booyah. I don't know. Whatever. Let's say that's how you spell it. So now every player object, every instance of this class has access to a method called taunt. So I could do, player1 dot taunt. And now over here in my browser, we in fact see booyah printed out. Very exciting, I know. And let's make one more player. Const player2 equals new player. And we'll do a player2 dot taunt. Okay. We should see booyah printed out twice. Excellent. Our class currently is very basic. It has one method. There are no properties, right? We're not passing in any values when we make a player. We're not storing any information that pertains to individual instances of a player. But we have a valid class, and that class has one method. So next up, we're going to talk about constructors.